Okay, I've just hit record. Oh, thank God. Almost forgot. So now we're being recorded, but this is not going far and wide. There's only, it's a couple of people who have asked me to record it because they can't make it at this time. So, oh, this was the one thing I was going to tell you before we start. I don't know if all of you have been watching our Friday 5 p.m. Shabbat videos. So we've been recording them every week on Wednesdays. So I get dressed for Shabbat, and this is what you'll see me wearing on Friday at 5. So you're in the know now. I feel very, very aware that everybody is like watching my outfit every week, even more so than usual maybe in person on Shabbat.
This is like the red carpet before the Oscars.
This is it. This is the sneak peek at the Rabba's outfit, the Shabbat outfit. So for me now, Wednesday is Shabbat in this very odd way.
Rachel Maddow wears the same outfit on TV every week.
She does?
Every night, yeah. She's got jackets, 3 black jackets, and she wears them every
Good for her. I feel like that would be a feminist statement. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing, just listen to what I say. Okay, well, so the book of Numbers, you've not come for my wardrobe. I hope you've come for the book of Numbers. So, okay, I'm just gonna mute everybody again, make sure we're starting well, and you can unmute as you need. Bamidbar is called, actually Bimidbar, not Bamidbar, even though we end up saying Bamidbar. But Bimidbar is the word that is part of the phrase Bimidbar Sinai. It's simply the most significant phrase at the beginning of the book. And that's why it's called Bimidbar, because the first verse, chapter 1, verse 1, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe, God spoke to Moses, Bimidbar Sinai, in the wilderness of Sinai. That means from before the book of Numbers, the book of Leviticus, and before that, the book of Exodus, Shemot, we haven't gone anywhere. So they got out of Egypt, they got to Sinai, they got the Torah, and they've been standing there ever since. And this book opens Bimidbar Sinai, in the wilderness of Sinai, Be'echad, the first day of the second month of the second year. So they've been out of Egypt. We're counting from having left Egypt. They've been out of Egypt a year and a bit. And they haven't traveled anywhere past Sinai yet. And the book of Bamidbar will take us through essentially almost the entire 40 years. The next book, the final book of the Torah, will be the book of Devarim. And the book of Devarim basically is the final year of Moses' life. So if you think about the fact that we're starting in year 2 out of Egypt, and we're going to end at year 39, so it's a good 38 years through this book. And the books before had almost no time elapsed. The book of Bimidbar is a story of a mission gone wrong. And last week we looked, I'm not going to look at it again with you right now, but last week we looked at that turning point in the book, because they're leaving Sinai, they're getting into Israel. They will be traveling directly to Israel right now, except they're not, because the rebelling begins and the punishment of 40 years in the desert then is given by God. So they're told only the next generation will enter the land. And so there's actually, what we'll see when we get there, the first 11 chapters of the book sort of have an abrupt stop or an abrupt end. You could have ended the book of Bamidbar at chapter 11, because they were really about to go into the land, and then the complaining begins. And as there's a book, actually I have it right here because I've been reading it now. There's a book, Rabbi Nathaniel Helfgott, Natty Helfgott in New Jersey wrote this lovely book called Mikra and Meaning, Studies in Bible and Its Interpretation. And much of it is centered on the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar. He says when they get to chapter 11, Natty Helfgott says, the Jewish people enter chapter 11. They go bankrupt. So the whole, what does he say? The whole enterprise goes bankrupt. That's what he says. So that will not be what we study today, but that's sort of the big shift in the narrative. Sorry, I'm on my class. Oh, okay, take it. It's okay. This is our recording. Go ahead, just close the door. Okay. I told you we're recording Shabbat, so they needed the recording equipment that I had here. So what I'd like to do today is to begin chapter 1 and get into chapter 2 as well. And oh, that's fine. And sorry, I get distracted by all the things I'm looking at. It's very hard. I find this very tricky. So we're going to look at chapter 1, and I'm opening it on my other screen. And we're going to read this chapter as if we're really about to go into Israel. So this is what I've done. I have a second screen because the main screen that I'm on does not have quick enough power. But I'm using now another screen just to drive me even more crazy so that we can look at this text together. So you should see now Numbers chapter 1, verse 1. And sorry, I have to get this shorter, smaller. I'm just managing myself here for a minute. Okay. And we'll just get a sense of what's the purpose of these first couple of chapters. I think that when we hit these kinds of chapters that are very, I don't know, boring or seem to be very boring, they're about numbers and names, we sort of gloss over them. But I don't want to read necessarily every single word, but I want us to understand their function of these opening chapters. The book of Numbers, by the way, is called the book of Numbers because it starts with a census of the people, a count of the people, and there will be another count. And now we understand why there will be another count toward the end of the book of Numbers, because it will be the next generation, sort of plan B. The next generation was about to go into the land and they needed to recount. The first count is as if we're really about to go right in. So keep that in mind as we follow the narrative, and we'll see how far we get. I'm not committed to doing the full hour necessarily. It might be hard on Zoom. I don't know. I'm thinking a lot about Zoom fatigue, but let's see how far we go. So God spoke to Moses, the Ohel Moed, in the tent of meeting. That's in the Mishkan, where God spoke to Moses from. Be'echad lachodesh hasheni, b'shana hashenit. So again, the first day of the second month in the second year after the Exodus, still in the wilderness of Sinai. And verse 2. So now I'm in chapter 1, verse 2. Oops. Se'u et rosh kol adat b'nei Yisrael. So as always, I'm going to be saying it in the Hebrew or saying it in the English, a little of both, but follow along with whatever's most comfortable for you. Count, take a census of the nation of Israel, lemishpechotam lebeit avotam, by family, essentially by tribe. They were counting every male, one by one. From age 20, miben esrim shana v'mala. That's verse 3. But look at this phrase, Kol yotzei tzava b'Yisrael. Everyone age 20 and up who would be going out to bear arms. So what's the purpose? It's a very specific purpose, this count, this census. It's not just to know who we've got. We know who we were when we left Egypt, but we're preparing for something very specific now. We're preparing for battle because we're really about to go into the land of Israel. We don't yet know there will be 40 years. We're about to go into the land, and we need to know what our arm strength is. Okay, I'm going to just skim down. It begins by saying we're going to be counting by tribe. So verse 5, Eila shemot ha'anashim asher ya'amdu itchem. These are the men that are going to assist you. So essentially the leader of every tribe is going to assist in the count of each tribe. Reuven has this Elitzur ben Shteor. Shimon has Shlumiel ben Surishadai. There's actually been studies of all of these names and the way the names change from the first generation to the second generation. We can look at that if it's interesting. When we get to the second generation, it's interesting to compare and contrast. But you see each tribe, look at verse 7. This is a familiar character. Verse 7, Li Yehuda, each tribe has its leader. the tribal leader of Yehuda, the Nasi of Yehuda, is Nachshon ben Aminadav. We know his name because he was the guy that jumped into the Red Sea first. He was already showing himself to be a leader as they were leaving Egypt. Okay. I'm skipping down, and if you're in your own book, I'm going to pick it up with verse 16 is sort of a summary verse, still in chapter 1, verse 16. These are the elected of the assembly, the chieftains, the Nisi'im of the tribes. Okay. And look at verse 19. Just as the Lord commanded Moses, Kasher tzivah Hashem et Moshe, he counted Vayaf Kidem b'Midbar Sinai. He counted the people in the wilderness of Sinai. By the way, the book of Numbers in Hebrew is Sefer HaPikudim, the book of counting. And that is a word that the sages, the Chazal, used to refer to the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, Sefer HaPikudim. Now here is where we get the count. So again, we're not going to read word by word every single tribe, but just look how it works. Look at how it works. Verse 20. Chapter 1, verse 20. Vayihiyu b'nei Reuven. The people of Israel, or the descendants of Reuven, Bechor Yisrael, who was the firstborn, were Toldotam leMishpechotam lebeit avotam. This translation is the registration of the clans of their ancestral house. Okay, so Toldot is descendants, Mishpechot by family, Beit Avot by their father's house, so by their groupings. This is how they would count them, essentially by household. Kol zachar miben esrim shana, every male over the age of 20, again, kol yotzei tzava, who will be able to bear arms. That's who we're counting. Of the tribe of Reuven, verse 21, their count was 46,500. Okay.
Why are they using 20 as the count? Don't we use the number 13?
That's a great question. Florence is asking, why are we counting from age 20? But 13 is the age of mitzvot and the age of adulthood, so to speak. Well, actually, it's significant then that they're really counting for armed forces. As much as a 13-year-old is mature enough to make decisions and to be held accountable for his mitzvot and his averot, right, his sins and his deeds, we're still not sending the 13-year-old out to battle. So I don't know that at 20 they're that much more mature, but physically they're soldiers, right? I mean, we sent to fight at 18, even though we still consider them kids, which is another conversation. Oof. Okay, thank you. So our muting question worked. Good. And we'll continue in this manner to count each tribe. Shimon, starting in verse 21, also gets its count, and Shimon was 59,300. And by the way, these numbers will become significant later when they are allotting the land. Each tribe got a portion of land in Eretz Yisrael, and so the larger tribes did get larger territories than the smaller tribes. They're not all the same size. Gad is 45,000. Judah is a very large tribe, 74,000. Yisachar, Zebulun. Joseph is counted separately, Ephraim and Manasseh, based on that moment in Breshit when Jacob said to Joseph, Yaakov said to Yosef, your children are like my children. They're becoming like tribes now. So we count Manasseh and Ephraim. Benjamin, a rather small tribe. Dan, 62,000. Asher, 41,000. If you're not following on the screen and you're following in your own book, I'm at verse 43, 44, 45, Naphtali. And there's the full count, verse 46, 603,550. So when we use the idea of 600,000 people, the nation was 600,000 left Egypt, or 600,000 is considered a critical mass of the nation. Even in halakha later, it's 603,000, okay? But that's only the men. So it's probably, a couple million people, actually. if you think about it. And just to note, verse 47, the Levites were not counted in this count. The Levites will have a separate census. So verse 47, Haleviim lematei avotam lo hatpakdu betocham. The Leviim don't go out to battle. They're the clergy, essentially. They have a different count because they will have specific jobs now in the wilderness. Actually, what's about to be enumerated is the way that they would carry the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the portable sanctuary. The Levites had that job, and that will also be enumerated here. Remember, what's the purpose of the beginning of the book of Bimidbar? Is getting all our ducks in a row, getting ready to travel directly into the land of Israel. So you see now, beginning in verse 50, now you put the Levites in charge of the tabernacle and its furnishings, and they'll carry the tabernacle. And there's sort of a description of how they'll carry it. Actually, later on, very specifically, which child of Levite carries which part of the tabernacle.
What about the Kohanim?
That's important. The Kohanim are a subset of Leviim. Thank you. So the tribe of Levi all had holy jobs in I'll just say in the temple later, but in the tabernacle now. And the Kohanim were among the tribe of Levi. These were the descendants only of Aaron. And the Kohanim were the ones that were actually going to do the service. But the Leviim were helpers all along. And they were also, by the way, later on, they were the musicians. They were playing music in the temple. They would here be the carrying the they were carrying the tabernacle. There's a question here in the chat: were they expecting to meet enemies? Yeah, they knew they were going into the land of Canaan, where other nations were there, and even as throughout the Torah, God says, you're going into the Eretz Kanaani, Chizi, Chivi, Prizi, Yevusi. These were the nations, the Hittite, the Jebusite. At the age of 20 was just the age of the military age. So there's not a significance to 20 other than the significance of what the nation is about to encounter. They know it's not going to be simple, and that's ultimately, that's what happens not in the 5 books of Moses, because they didn't get to go in until 40 years later, but it happens when we finish the Torah and we begin the prophets, we begin the book of Joshua. The very first thing Joshua does, he gets them across into the land, and then they go to Jericho. They fight the inhabitants of Jericho. And then throughout the book of Joshua, they're conquering and fighting these inhabitants. But remember, for them, it was always a return to the land of their ancestors. It was a return to the land that God had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and now, they inhabit it. I want to look at some of chapter 2. So we've finished the census. Oh, you know what, let me take a moment and ask if anyone else has questions. I see another question in the chat about the mixed multitude, the Erev Rav that came with Bnei Israel. Yeah, we don't have a count of them. So the Erev Rav is referenced, it will be referenced also in the book of Numbers, as this sort of lot of troublemakers, if you will. It was understood that there was it's called a mixed multitude, the Erev Rav, or a group of foreigners who sort of glommed onto the nation as they were leaving Egypt or as they were traveling through the wilderness. And I say that they're sort of pointed out as troublemakers because sometimes it's explicit, but sometimes it's only in the Midrash when the trouble starts, when the kvetching begins. The rabbis of the Midrash say, oh, that was the Erev Rav, that was this mixed multitude that were starting rebellion. Maybe to place blame outside of the righteous people of Israel, maybe. Or maybe just to show that the nation is not isolated. they're still among other nomadic tribes maybe, or other people, and they're big news. They've gotten out of Egypt and they're walking to the promised land. So we don't know how many. You're right. We don't have a count of the Erev Rav. They're sort of a fringe group at best. I don't know how else to answer that question or comment. I guess it was a good comment. Any other questions or comments, please put it in the chat or unmute yourself before we move on to chapter 2. Okay.
Yes, when they say Israel's firstborn, that means Jacob's firstborn, right?
Yes, thank you. Jacob and Israel, those are interchangeable. Yaakov, Reuven is the eldest of Israel, of Jacob. And because of that, he kind of, even as a tribe later, is mentioned first and has this kind of elder status. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we ready? Oh, there's another question coming.
Yeah, where does it say about that, the other nation, the other people that were trollmakers?
It's not mentioned here. I'll show you as we encounter it later in the book of Numbers.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, someone was asking because they knew from elsewhere. I'm
Mm,
gonna unmute the phone just for a minute. I think it was Zila. Zila, are you able to mute and unmute yourself?
Yes, I forgot the number. I think it's *69.
Okay, so I just unmuted you for a second to make sure that you know how to do that. Okay. Muting you again. Great. So let's look at chapter 2. So again, like my goal here is not to get every single fact, but to even a little bit demystify these chapters that seem sometimes to go by in a blur. So chapter 2 has a very specific purpose as well. Chapter 1, we're doing a count of the people. Chapter 2, we are arranging them in camp. They're now about to travel and rest, and travel and rest. And again, they're going to be staying in formation, in a very specific formation. So chapter 2, verse 1, God spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, each group, Ish al diglo, the Israelites shall camp each with its standard under the banner of their ancestral house. So under the banner of their tribe, essentially. They're going to encamp with a flag. So anyone who has seen so many stained glass windows decorated with the tribes of Israel, gosh, I'm trying to remember if we have any in the Shar. The ones at the front, no, those are like the flame. But the tribes of Israel are essentially these banners, and the symbols began back in the end of Bereshit when Jacob had blessed the 12 sons, each with different sorts of metaphors. Judah is the lion, and Dan is the snake, and Zebulun, I think it is the boat. But that's what I imagine these flags to be. And sorry, I really should be using my reading glasses. There we go. So we'll see specifically how they encamped in these clusters. Camped at the front on the east side, verse 3, is the division of Judah. Judah, and his leader is Nachshon ben Aminadav, and his number had been 74,600. And Judah is the leader that then will have two other tribes flanking him, Yisachar, and we have his number. That's verse 4. Verse 5. It's tribe of Yisachar, and we have his leader and his number. And verse 7 and 8 is Zebulun. So what happened actually is that let's say we have 12 tribes, they're divided by 4 into groups of 3. So Judah and his two buddies, Yisachar and Zebulun, are going to encamp on one side. And then the next one, verse 9 is a summary of then all those 3 tribes together. The next one, verse 10, Degel Machaneh Reuven, the encampment of Reuven, who had been 46,000. With him will be, look at verse 12, camping with him will be Shimon. We have his leader and his number, and Gad. So we're dividing them into threes. Judah and his two buddies on one side, Reuven and his two on the other side. When I say two buddies, you know what I mean? Two fellow tribes. And then we have the total. And in the middle, look at verse 17. We had the encampment of Judah. We had the encampment of Reuven. Before we go to the third and the fourth encampment, look at verse 17. Midway between the divisions was the tent of meeting, the division of the Levites. They were marching, carrying the tabernacle. So Judah first, then Reuven. And now verse 18, Degel Machane Ephraim. And with Ephraim is Menashe, verse 20, and Benjamin, verse 22. Why are Menashe, Ephraim, and Benjamin grouped together? What do they have in common in their ancestry?
Joseph.
Yes, Joseph and Benjamin, who both came from Rachel. So the children of Rachel are always kind of the beloved to Jacob, and they cluster together here. So that's the group of Ephraim. And then verse 25, on the north, I hope this isn't confusing. What's being described simultaneously is the way they're going to encamp when they're rested, the east, the west, the south, and the north, and also the way they're then going to walk when they're marching. First, second, third, fourth. There's a question?
Yeah, I have a diagram here.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait a minute. It's hard for me to see. And see if I can make it larger.
Page 572.
You have a diagram in your...
Yeah.
Oh, in the art scroll Chumash?
Yep. No, in the
Pentateuch and Haftorah.
Okay.
Chumash. Yeah, page 572.
I'm just going to stop this screen share for a second. And now we're back to
This
normal.
is a Hertz. What I have is the Hertz.
Okay. So you know what? These diagrams are available
Online, I'm sure.
online, and you can see what I'm referring to. What the text is describing is how they're going to rest and how they're going to travel. But what I wanted to point out is in the description of how they're going to travel, the ark is in the center. It gave the first three tribes, the next three tribes, then the Levites carrying the ark, and not only the ark, but the entire tabernacle, excuse me. And then the third group and the fourth group. So we have 4 groups of 3, making a total of 12 tribes. How did we get to 12 if the Levites aren't counted? We have Ephraim and Menashe, so there are 2. So we're still at 12.
Excuse me?
It's
Excuse me?
also diplomatic that they're all equidistant from the Mishkan.
Yes, they're all
Okay.
equidistant, centered around the Mishkan. And then someone else is trying to speak? Is that Naomi?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. I see in this diagram, there's Merarites, sons of Aaron, Kohan.
Yeah. So those are,
So
yes, those are the Levite families.
I see.
So the Levite families are sort of encircling the, we didn't really get to that yet. They're
Okay.
encircling the
The
tabernacle.
tent of the meeting, yeah.
And then around them are going to be the 12 tribes on 4 different sides.
So Aaron is a Levite.
Exactly. And only the descendants of Aaron are the
Kohanim.
Kohanim. Yeah.
Rachel, I wanted to,
Just going to be Naomi, yes, Farla.
I might have missed this, but is there more importance from one tribe to the other, the Levites being the ones in charge of the tabernacle? Are they considered more important?
Yeah, they have a spiritual job, let's just say. They are elevated. I don't know that they're more, I don't know, I feel like all of my democratic instincts are railing against, they're more important. Every tribe is counted and every person is counted. But yeah, the Levites are in the inner circle. And yeah, there's a hierarchy of sorts when it comes to who's got first access to the tabernacle and to the worship of God in that way. That's the big difference between the temple and the synagogue. The temple or the tabernacle had these intermediaries, if you will, the Levites, and then within them the Kohanim, and they were doing the service, the avodah, on behalf of the people. Fast forward to after the destruction of the temple, when we have synagogues, and that's an all access, right? We don't have, only you can, read from the Torah, or you can pray, or you can, bracketing the male-female dynamic, which is something else, but we don't have a hierarchy in the synagogue. Everyone is praying for themselves.
And the Kohanim, where do the Kohanim fit in? Because I always thought that they had a special position.
Yeah, so the next step in chapter 2, we'll have the count of the Levites. And you know what? I'm going to look for a second. I might screen share this again. Chapter 3. The count of the Levites. Here, you know what? Let me screen share this again.
It seems as though they made a circle around the Levites and the Kohanim in order to protect them while they were marching. No?
It made a circle. One second.
Seems, well, there's east, west, front, and back. It's like a circle.
So they're not marching in a circle. They are, did this work? Did I screen share well? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
They are marching linearly and then encamping in a square or a circle, I guess you could say.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant.
Yes, exactly. Around the Levites who are around the tabernacle.
That's
what it is, yes.
But that's also a protective. Sorry.
Go ahead, Esther.
It's a protective kind of situation. In order to have the tabernacle be protected with everybody all around it.
You could see it as a protection, but actually I would say it the opposite. It's to emphasize that the tabernacle and that God is at the center, and that everyone has equal connection, right? Because they're all around in a circle. If anything, they would have understood it the opposite, that the ark is protecting us, that God is protecting us, and God is at the center.
Well, yes, but in terms of if they were ever attacked on their way, the people on the outside would be the ones taking care of what's in the middle.
Yes.
That's what I mean.
And to answer the question in the chat from Lila, yes, women and children certainly would be in these formations. This was the entire nation traveling, and then the entire nation encamping. But in the count, they count by, heads of household, essentially. They count by the men.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
The tribe of Levi, the Levites, they were from the son of Jacob named Levi, right?
Exactly, yes.
And then within that tribe of Levi is the sons of Aaron. They're the Kohanim.
Yes, Aaron is essentially the grandson of Levi.
Okay, thank you.
Is it grandson or great-grandson? Now I'm doubting myself. I think grandson. Might even have it here. I'm not going to look for it right now. Waste our time together. Yes, but Aaron is one of the descendants of Levi, and his descendants are the Kohanim. He is the high priest, right? He's the Kohen Gadol. His son eventually takes over for him, but all of his children, including myself and my family, we are descendants of Aaron, and we are a Kohen family, yeah. But we are of the tribe of Levi.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you see what I've put up on the screen here, the beginning of chapter 3 has a separate count I'm just going to make sure everyone's muted.
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question. Yes, Naomi.
Yeah. Let me think. Okay, so was that in front of the whole, all the nation that was leaving? Was the ark of the tent of the meeting, or whatever they call
Yes,
it?
the tent of meeting is
That
this
was
sort
in the
of,
beginning. Yeah.
no,
that
it
was
would be in the
front,
center. It would be in
center
the center, actually. So
of all the people.
yeah, the center of the, yeah.
Okay, because it
Actually,
was led by a fire and smoke.
yeah, you know what, actually, the
I wouldn't think
ark,
it was
so we saw
ark,
separately,
yeah.
the ark would go ahead, but the tabernacle and all of the
Well, yeah,
all
that's
of
in the they're in the
tools
middle.
would be carried in the midst, in the
So
vessels.
they're in the front of the people. They're in front of the nation. They're going in front of everybody.
So my understanding is, I need to look at this again. My understanding is that they're in the center, but they're in the center carrying, when we say carrying the tabernacle, they're the boards, the curtains, the coverings, the vessels, the altar, etc. That would be in the center. But the ark itself, I remember now we were reading about the ark going ahead 3 days ahead to sort of lead the way.
Oh, they lead the way. They lead everybody.
I just want to, I actually didn't expect we were going to get this far, but I'd like to sort of get the beginning of chapter 3 so you can have a sense of the Levites, but I didn't want to read the whole count of the Levites and their families as well. I wanted to sort of skip ahead. So let's just see the beginning of chapter 3 here, where we see the sons of Aaron are named, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Itamar. And they were the Kohanim HaMishuchim, the priests who were anointed. And then it's reminding us that Nadav and Avihu, the first two sons, had been killed. That's what happened in the last book. But this is sort of the appointing of the Kohanim and the initiating of the, sorry, I'm just looking ahead in my book as well, the initiating of the tabernacle of the Mishkan. And throughout the next couple of chapters, each of the sons of Levi will be counted. What I wanted to get to, which maybe we can look at just for a minute and then we'll end our time together. Give me a second. Here we go. So this is a fabulous website. If anybody doesn't know about it, you should make Safari a habit. I'm skipping ahead to chapter 7 in the book of Numbers. So if you're in an old-fashioned book, you can look for yourself in the book of Numbers, chapter 7. They're, again, preparing for their journey forward into Israel. And one of the most important things, like we said, that's at the center is the worship of God, is the tabernacle, the Mishkan. And this, chapter 7, is sort of the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end. So they're kind of ready now for a fully operational Mishkan that is then going to be traveling with them throughout their time through the wilderness, getting into Israel. So look at the beginning of chapter 7. On that day that Moses finished setting up the Mishkan, B'yom kilot Moshe lahakim et hamishkan, he anointed and consecrated all of its furnishings. This is almost a continuation of the end of the book of Leviticus. The altar, the vessels, and then the chieftains, the Nisi'im, which we had read about, the leader of each tribe already, we saw their name, are each going to bring an inaugural gift on behalf of each tribe, sort of to set them going, to set the process in motion. The chieftains drew near and brought their offering before the Lord. Vayaviu et korbanam lifnei Hashem. And as you continue through, actually, first, before we get to the enumeration of the offerings, look at verse 4. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, God said to Moses, saying, Kachme itam, accept these from them for use in the service of the Mishkan, of the tent of meeting. Give them to the Levites. So they took all of the offerings, gave them to the Levites. This is kind of now like how the operation is going to work. And just here we go. This is how they're going to carry all of the vessels. So Gershon in verse 7, the Gershonites, and in verse 8, the Merarites, and in verse 9, the Kahatites. Those are the three names of the sons of Levi. Gershon, Kahat, and Merari. And each of those sons has specific roles in the Levite jobs. The verse 9, the Kahat was sort of the most, I don't want to say elite, but I'll say elite. They're the ones who are carrying the holy vessels, and they don't carry any of these items in wagons. It says, Bekatefi sa'u, they carry them on their shoulders, the holiest parts of the tabernacle. So again, I'm not so concerned with every detail here. I just want you to see the feeling of the first few chapters of the book is that we're leaving, we're traveling, we are ready, we counted, we're encamped, we have our Levites in order, we're initiating now the offerings in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. This is Parashat Naso, which we'll read actually in another few weeks. Each tribe gave the same offering, but it repeats and repeats and repeats each time. Here, if you look at verse 12, on the first day it was Nachshon for the tribe of Judah. On the first day, meaning of the initiation of the Mishkan, like we're ready to be operational. And they brought this offering. And look down to verse 18, Bayom HaSheni, on the second day, it was the tribe of Yisachar, and he brought the same offering, right? Bowls and basin, flour, meal, a ram, a lamb, all this good, yummy stuff. So this is sort of the beginning of the end of the setup. That's why I said it's the beginning of the end. And they're ready to travel. What we'll look at next time, I'm looking in my old-fashioned book. What we'll look at next time is they tied up a couple of loose ends, chapters really 8 and 9 and 10. So I'm just trying to think of what to tell you to read for next time, because some of you wanted to really read ahead. If you want to be ambitious and read all of these chapters, you can read chapters 8, 9, and 10. But what I think we'll do is focus more just on 9 and 10. For now, to wrap up what we've looked at today, I'm going to skip ahead to the end of chapter 7, because that's where we've been. Oh, what is the name of the website? Sepharia.org, Sefaria, Sepharia.org. I'll show you actually the homepage of it so you can see what it looks like. This is such a long chapter because every single one of the 12 tribes gives their offering, and every single one is listed, even though it's repetitive, because every single one is important. 12th day, so there was 12 days of this miluim, this like initiation, and that ends verse 84. So now just to wrap up, I'm looking at chapter 7, verse 84. Zot Chanukat HaMizbeach. This is the dedication of the altar, or the dedication of the tabernacle. Chapter 7, verse 84. And in total, this was all of the offering that all of these 12 tribes gave. And we are basically, we're sort of ready to roll. We've counted the people. We've set them up in camp. We've gotten the tabernacle to be functional. The altar has now brought its first offerings, one from each tribe. And what we'll see next week are some of the other preparations. For example, I think I mentioned this last time, creating the the chatzotzrot, the horns that they'll blow when they're traveling. Creating, addressing maybe we can do this, Pesach Sheni, the second Passover. There's a question. Oh, that was the name of the website you got. I wanted to show you this website while I have you. Look at this. If you go to the home page of Sepharia, So this is Sepharia. And I know some of the people who run this website. It's just top notch. And you can click where it says start at the beginning, because that's where we start at Genesis, or you didn't have to do that. I'm just going to X this. Anytime you want to, you can click up here at the top left and get this, what just came up. Oh, no, that wasn't usually it. Oh, yeah. When you click at these little lines on the top left, you get all of this amazing text. You can look at the Tanakh, you can look at the Mishnah, the Talmud, the Midrash, liturgy, and then they also have, according to the weekly Parsha, the Haftorah of the week, or you can search by topic. So if I want to go to the book of Numbers, I can click on the Tanakh, and there's the entire Tanakh, Torah, prophets, and writings, along with commentators, by the way, tons of commentators. So I'll click on my book of Numbers, and then this is the coolest part. When I click on one of the verses, look what pops up along the side. More commentary than you could read in your lifetime. I can click on commentary, or I can click on places in the Talmud that mention this verse, just on this verse. Midrash, Halacha, Kabbalah. If I click to the next verse, I'm just clicking on this verse. There we go. Other commentaries. So I click on commentary, and there's Rashi, all of our friends. If it's not bolded, if it's faded, that means that commentator didn't write a comment on this particular verse. But when I click Rashi, yes.
Another question. Are there any differences in the I know this is not a text which is very disputational, shall we say. Are there any differences in the interpretation of some of these texts? And you could explain what the differences in the interpretation is?
Yes, yes, I would say yes. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of an example. You know, different commentators might answer the same question in different ways.
That's what I mean.
Yes, absolutely. So, let me get a good example for you. Okay, here's a simple example from the story of Noah's Ark. It says Noah built an ark, and when he was finished, the last thing he added was a tzohar. And a tzohar is what? We don't know. It's the only place in the whole Torah where the word tzohar comes. So different commentators will answer that question in different ways. One opinion is that the tzohar was a window, that Noah added a window which let light into the ark. And the other opinion is that it was a precious stone, like almost like a chandelier that reflected light. Either way, it's a light source. But does that answer your question? Multiple interpretations of the same word?
I'm just saying, perhaps you could find a couple referring to the text you're talking about.
Yes. Okay. So you're looking for more commentary. So I think that will be more compelling, or maybe easier to do when we get to these narratives, these stories. Okay. I haven't really hit some good juicy stories.
Thank you.
There's less commentary on the census and the encampments. I will give you one comment. Actually, this is great. Let's end on this, because it's like a nice moral lesson that arises from the quote unquote boring parts of this. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen now. You know, one of the things we noticed is that the tribes encamped around in this square formation, and that inside of them were the Levites, different families of Levites on different sides, and the tabernacle and the ark in the center. And one of the comments of Rashi, I believe it was Rashi, I can find it for you, says that you have to notice which Levites were encamped near which tribes. So later, we're going to read later in the book of Numbers of the rebellion of Korach. Korach was a Levite. He was of the family of, I think the Levite family of Merari, maybe. He was or maybe I don't remember now. So Kahat was a Levite, and he started rebelling against Moses. Why are you the leader? Maybe I should be the leader, right? Like, actually, Moses is a Levite. I'm a Levite. I have a right to lead. And when the rebellion of Korach happens, there is 250 men who join him from the tribe of Reuven. And Rashi says on this part of the book where we were reading about their encampment, Rashi says, notice that Reuven is encamped near the family of Kahat. And he says, Oy la rasha, oy la shcheno. Woe to the wicked person and woe to his neighbor. Because Korach, Reuven got caught up in the rebellion of Korach. And then he says, by the same token, it was the sons of Aaron were encamped near the tribes of Yisachar and Zebulun, who were very righteous. Like, Tov la tzaddik, tov la shcheno. It's good for the righteous, it's good for his neighbor. Oy la rasha, oy la shcheno. Woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbor. Reminding us that who we surround ourselves with very much influences our own.
We can say we're judged by the company we keep.
There you go. There you go. So we can learn deep lessons even from things like encampments and formations and numbers and things.
I have a question. You said at some point this is your favorite book. Why? What makes it your favorite book?
Not the part we're in right now.
Okay, I didn't think so. Okay.
What makes it my favorite is the way is this progression that we're about to see, the stories that we're about to read. So I'm toying with, like, I really want to jump into those juicy stories, but I want to get the ground prepared for it, because what's my favorite about it is, like, we're kind of la-di-da, the book could have ended after chapter 10, really. And then all hell breaks loose, pardon the expression. Like, and what's interesting is seeing the rebellion and seeing how the leadership fails too, in response to those rebellions. All right, I guess we did fill the hour, my goodness. Naomi has a question or a comment. Let's take just one or two last comments, and I want to make sure you're unmuted. Wait, I don't hear you. I don't know why it's not unmuting for me. Just a minute, Naomi, we can't hear you. Just a minute. Unmute. I'm not able to unmute you right now for some reason. There we are.
Wait, okay.
No?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any significance? Because I assume they're traveling east. Are they traveling east?
No, they're traveling north.
All around?
They're traveling north from Egypt up toward north toward.
They're traveling north. So I'm wondering if there's any significance as to the arrangement around the Mishkan.
East is sort of
Northeast.
I don't know. I have to look into that.
Or maybe they're not all traveling the same direction all the time because they're there for 40 years. So maybe they're, I don't know.
But they are, at this point, they're traveling straight north.
North, okay.
Yeah.
But didn't they cross the Red Sea, so they should be traveling east towards Israel?
They're going
after they get,
and then eventually they're going to go around to the east. I know we're in the wrong direction here, but right now, I mean, I don't know if they're due north, but essentially they're traveling from Egypt north toward Israel. They would go right up through Eilat. Like, that's where they would be going. All right. Thank you, everyone. I feel like my brain gets a little scrambled when I'm teaching this way, so I hope I've been more or less coherent. It's been so lovely to have all of you. I'm going to unmute everyone. We might hear a little bit of a balagan. I don't know. There we are.
It was good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you. And we'll meet again here, the same link, same place next Wednesday. And you can look at chapters 8, 9, and 10. We'll focus on the end part of those chapters.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Wednesday. Enjoy the sunshine.
Another email with reminding us of the Zoom link.
I'm sorry, what's that, David?
Can you send us another email like the day before?
Sure. Yeah. The Zoom link. Yes, that's what you're saying. Yes, no problem. Perfect.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Just submit the other.